This is a scary story that, although frightening to me as well, the worst part of it actually happened to someone else other than me. I was very scared when I found out what happened, though. I'm not going to tell you where this happened, although the story did make the newspapers. The family has wanted privacy for years, though. I was driving home from work. I worked in a fast food restaurant, and at the time, I was the closing manager. We were open late, and I was literally the last person to close his store in the area. It was dark and completely dead outside. I lived in a very quiet town as well, that at the time had been a place for people to move to at retirement age. My point being that it was extremely silent, and there were almost no businesses open as well. There were nearly no cars on the road either. Bad news for me is that I needed to get some gas really badly, and that meant I had to find a place that was still open. Right out of town, there was this one place that was open pretty much all day and night. It was a rather new store, but even then, this happened before you would pay gas right on the pump, so I would have to go inside. This was alright with me anyway though, because I wanted to get myself a pop. Things seemed weird right from the get-go though. I mean, it was expected that late at night there would be only one person working. No cliches here though. It was a very nice, new and bright store. What seemed weird though was the guy who was running the place. He wasn't at the register or even somewhere that I could see him. I went to get my drink and still I could not find anybody in the store. I went up to the register and wondered what exactly was going on. I was up there for a few minutes just looking around, wondering what to do. Finally, a door to what I assumed was the back room to the store opened up, and a man came up towards the register. While there was nothing unusual about his looks, again leaving out horror movie gas station cliches, I could just kinda tell there was definitely something wrong with him. He looked annoyed and extremely fidgety. It was almost like I had interrupted something that he was doing, which he obviously felt was more important than doing his job. He didn't say anything to me about how he could help me, or even ask me what I needed, and when I didn't say anything right away, he gave me an extremely annoyed look that seemed to say, "Well, what do you want?" I told him that I needed $20 or something on the pump, and I wanted to buy a soda too. He quickly rang me up, took my money, and gave me the change. Once the guy was done, he began to walk back toward the door that he had come out from. He stopped though. It was almost as if he could feel my eyes on him, and he turned around and looked at me. He didn't talk, but he gave me this very rude look that told me, "Whoa, what's taking you so long to leave?" It took me a moment to shake it off and also tell myself that I would never pay money at this place ever again. I turned to leave, and then he turned and went back to the door and walked through it. Mostly I was annoyed to have spent my money at a place with such lousy customer service. I didn't give any thought at the time as to why the guy may have been acting like that in the first place. I just pumped my gas. Then I hopped in my car, drove home, and figured I would never ever think about this event again. In the morning, I got up and decided to watch television for a little while. There was an interruption in the program. They were talking about an arrest for an attack and attempted murder. Suddenly, they showed a scene filmed earlier, before the sun had even come up. If I was not shocked to see the gas station, I was more shocked to see that rude attendant being led to a police car in handcuffs. It turned out that man was a former employee. He had not even been working there at the time, but had gone there to get revenge on the man who had fired him from the job. He'd attacked the man and bloodied him up pretty badly in the back room. The owner of the store came in early and noticed the fired employee working and called the police. They found the attacked worker back there in the back room. It was terrifying wondering just what may have been going on while I was still in the store. And even though the guy went to jail, I was still way too nervous to go to that store again. Each year, one of my closest friends and I, who we'll call Dane, go down to visit his grandparents at their cabin in a nice, small, peaceful town in the North Georgia mountains. Me, my friend, and his grandpa are all outdoors kind of people, so we're always looking for something fun for all of us to do around the area. Well, one night, we decided to go on a night hike on a trail not too far from the cabin. Now, this isn't the kind of trail you're probably thinking of. It really was like a gravel dirt road, but a lot of hunters, campers, motorbikers, and backpackers use it. We headed out to the trail, and right as we pulled up to the trail we were going to hike on, we noticed an older, beat-up, and suspicious-looking black Chevy SUV with two middle-aged men in it, parked right next to the entrance of the trail. Now, even though this is a safe area, drug deals and other kinds of sketchy activity can occur deep in these woods, so we avoided going on that trail and decided to head down another one about a half a mile down the road. We pulled about 50 or so feet into the trail, just outside from the view of the road, parked the truck, got out, and started on our hike. So far, it was off to a great start, until we got about a mile in, and we started to hear a dog bark from probably about 300 feet away. We decided to keep going at first, but the dog just would not start barking, and we didn't know if the dog was on a leash or not. It could come attack us, so we decided it would probably be a smart idea to turn around and head back. When we were about 1,000 or so feet away, I'd say, from the truck, we could see a car sitting right behind my friend's grandpa's truck, running with its headlights on. This instantly made us worried, because who the hell would just roll up behind a random truck at 10 o'clock at night on an isolated trail? Keep in mind, you would have to have driven down the trail to see where we even parked the truck, since it was not visible from the main road. We stood there for about 5 minutes, trying to see if we could make anybody out, but because it was so dark and pretty far away, it was hard for us to see anything. Fortunately for us, there was a pretty large tree next to the trail we were able to stand behind, so there was no way they could see us from where they were parked. My friend's grandpa took out these night vision binoculars we had with us to try and get a better look. Still, it was not much help. We decided to just stand there for a while and wait for them to turn around and leave, because there was no chance we were going to walk back with this random car with potential bad people in it, sitting right behind our truck. After about 10 minutes of just standing there, to my absolute horror, the car drives around the truck and starts to head down the trail in our direction. As fast as we could, we climbed up this hill right next to us and hid behind a large log that was sitting at the top. A few seconds later, the same beat-up black Chevy SUV we'd seen outside the other trail we were originally supposed to hike comes driving down where we were just standing, not even 15 seconds ago. The car had its windows rolled down and started to slow down as it drove past us. My friend, my grandpa, and I were terrified. Our hearts were pounding out of our chests, and we were scared these guys would stop and sit there, or even worse, get out and start looking for us. Fortunately, the car just kept driving on and never stopped. As soon as the car was out of sight, we got out of our hiding spot, booked it back to the truck, and blasted the hell out of there. I know this may not be as scary as some others, but to us it was definitely frightening. We don't know who these guys are or what they wanted. My guess? They had a stash on that trail deeper in the woods, and thought we had stumbled upon it or something, and were there to confront us or even worse. A lot of things could have gone wrong. Could have walked up to the truck just as they pulled in. What if they came out and looked for us? What if they had slashed the tires on the truck? Or what if they turned their headlights off and sat there, and we just hadn't seen them waiting for us to come back? My friend and his grandpa actually went back in the daytime a few days later to the exact spot we were hiding and took some pictures. The first picture is where we're standing looking at the truck and car behind it. Off in the distance, you can see our truck parked. That's exactly where we had it parked the same night. Just off to the left is the hill we rushed up to hide from the car. In the second picture, you can see where our hiding spot was. After my friend and his grandpa went back, they said we were very lucky to have made it up there successfully, as it seemed impossible to do it as fast as we did, especially with all the shrubs and thorns in the way. If we'd gotten up there even 2 seconds later, we would have surely been seen. I can only imagine what would have happened if we didn't make it up that hill, and those men saw us. Although I now live in the city, I grew up in extremely rural conditions. If you've ever heard of Dolly Parton or Loretta Lynn talk about their childhood, mine was not too far off from that. My parents were extremely poor, had many brothers and sisters, and we lived way in the country and out of town. Dolly Parton was the first person to come to mind, because of my relationship with an old man that lived in a shack even further out in the country than us. Our house was on the road, but to get to Old Bill's house, you would have to walk through the woods. There wasn't really a road that led to his shack. It was more like a clear path you had to ride in the middle of the woods if you were going to try and see him, so it was probably the most rural that I had ever seen someone actually live in. Now, Old Bill, as I remember calling him, wasn't exactly a very well-liked man. I think it was because he was a bit of a hermit. He rarely, if ever, would go into town for anything. I knew he regularly hunted in order to get food, and he didn't bathe a lot either, or ever that I really knew about, although he did have one of those old metal bucket bathtub things that you've maybe seen people bathing in while watching a western. I liked him though. Like a lot of older people who didn't get to have too much company, Old Bill really liked to talk. I knew that whenever my father would talk to him, he would always try his best to get out of talking to the old guy. He always found it hard to actually do this though, because Old Bill was just one of those guys who could trap you in a conversation. I, on the other hand, liked to listen to his stories. It didn't even bother me that he sometimes had a tendency to repeat himself and tell the exact same stories over and over again, as if he had forgotten that he had told me about them in the first place. I knew that a lot of kids my age, including some of my own brothers, liked to give Old Bill a really hard time though. I can recall them throwing rocks at his house, tearing down his clothesline if he had something hanging there, and even just yelling mocking things at him. But I never did anything like that. I just liked to talk to him. I don't know exactly what happened in this story, and I doubt anyone ever really found out the truth, but there was one night when I was around 13 years old. I had spent a long time over at Old Bill's shack, and it was pretty late at night before I finally went home. We were chatting, as usual, on the porch of his shack. There were some lightning bugs and the sounds of many crickets and frogs to fill the night. It was hot, but since we had no experience with anything like air conditioning back then, we barely thought anything of it. While we were sitting there talking, I looked off into the distance because I saw two lights coming towards us. It only took a moment for us to realize that someone was driving on that old path, which meant they were coming to Old Bill's house specifically. He found this odd because he rarely had anyone come to see him, and he absolutely never had them come at nighttime. When the truck got close to the shack, it stopped when it was about 30 feet or so from the house, and it didn't turn off its lights. Telling me to stay there, Bill got up and walked toward the truck. I was a bit nervous, mostly because I found the situation to be extremely weird. However, I did what I was told, and watched as the old man went to the driver's side of the truck. With those lights shining right on me in the dark, it was hard for me to see anything at all. All I could make out were a couple of shadows. One I knew had to be Bill, the other obviously the driver. At first, all I could hear were sounds of talking, but not any of the words being said themselves. However, as the voices started to rise a bit, I realized that Bill and the driver of the truck were arguing about something. Although I couldn't make out what was being said, I could tell both of them were very, very angry at each other. The only speech I was able to make out was Bill telling the guy to get the hell off his property, or he would go and grab his shotgun. This just led to more and more yelling, and me being scared, thinking that the situation was bad enough to warrant Bill to get his gun. As I stood there, wondering what to do, I suddenly heard a gunshot ring out. It was followed by some terrible noises that I can't even really begin to describe. Then, a man that I still couldn't make out the details of walked in front of the truck. He was standing right in the light of the headlights, and he was obviously looking in my direction. I was scared because I assumed that Bill had been shot, and this was the man who had just shot him. I suspected for what seemed like a never-ending moment that he was going to shoot me too. I don't know how long he stared at me while I was sitting there waiting for something to happen. It seemed like forever, but then I watched the man walk out of the light of the headlight, and the next thing I heard happened to be the sound of the truck door slamming. Then the truck began pulling out in reverse. There was no room to turn around, so it had to reverse the entire way out. Once the truck was completely gone, I was finally able to make myself move. I ran out to the place where it had been parking, and found old Bill's body. It was far too late to do anything though. He was absolutely dead. I didn't know what to do. I had never been in a situation like this before. My first thought was to try and move his body back into the shack, but he was too heavy for me to do that. So then, the only thing I could think of was to go home and tell my father what had happened. I hated just leaving his body on the ground like that. I also hated walking through the woods after I had just been a witness to a murder. I suspected that at any moment, the man might come back on foot in the woods and decide to kill me too. I was able to make it back home without incident though, and I told my father what happened. Now my father didn't care much for the old guy like most people, but he did care about me. He made me stay at home while he went and checked out what happened. My dad was gone for a long time. When he got back, he let us know that he had driven into town to talk to the police. We didn't have a telephone back then, but Bill was certainly dead, and they had absolutely no idea who had killed him. It was a horrid experience. It made me scared of the countryside for the rest of my life. I still don't go out into the country anymore. That's why I happily live in the city. Yeah, you can get killed there too, but at least I never watched anyone get killed in the city. To my knowledge, his murder was never solved. My parents are gone now, and they never updated me on if anything had been found. So, rip old Bill. What is up guys, Blue Spooky here as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. I hope you guys are enjoying this sort of daily upload thing. I'm trying to upload as much as possible while I still have the time to, mostly because I find it fun and there's not much else to do while COVID is around, so I hope you guys are enjoying that. If you guys liked the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. These stories were all submitted to me through my email by subscribers. If you guys would also like to submit stories for me to read in the video, please be sure to take a look in the description below. It will have links to all my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter accounts. You can go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to your story as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include as much detail as you feel comfortable with, so I can make it a nice, healthy, long video. Also, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, the theme of the story if it has one, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. Also, make sure you use proper grammar and spatial paragraphs and all that stuff, because it's kind of hard to read wall of text submissions. If you guys are new to the channel and you like this, I have two other channels, one where I do disaster documentaries, and another one where I do true crime videos. I do both of those once a week. You'll find links to those in the description as well. Those are called Mr. Blue Skies and Darkest Hour, respectively. Special thanks to my artist. His links to his social media will be in the description below. He does all of my artwork for this channel, and he does the thumbnails as well. If you like his art, so you can check his social media out, and he'll be able to get you something real cool if you're in the mood for that. If you guys are curious about the music, it's listed in the description below in the order which it appears with links to the artists. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it for now, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.